This is Neil V. Hitch interviewing Paul George on May 10th, 2023 for the Museum at Bethel Woods Oral History Collection. Paul, I want you to look in the camera and I want you to say, my name is Paul George and I was at Woodstock.
My name is Paul George and I was at Woodstock.
That was perfect. We start the same way when we start all these, which is I want you to tell me about your life in the summer of 1969. How old you are, where you're living, who you're living with, like what life is like for you, and then how you hear about Woodstock.
Well, the summer of 1969, I was 17 years old, and at the time I was living just for the summer in Ocean City, New Jersey, a resort town not far from where I grew up. I had a summer job in a kitchen at one of the resort restaurants down there, and I was in Ocean City because in addition to protesting the war and going to a lot of concerts, I was also a surfer, so I was down there to go surfing for the summer. And I don't remember when I first heard about Woodstock. One of my friends, Bob, heard about it first because he worked in a record store, so he was always getting tips about the upcoming concerts and discounted tickets and stuff like that. And in fact, he got us discounted tickets for the Atlantic City Pop Festival just a couple weeks before Woodstock. So I was able to have one day off from work and meet my Woodstock friends, Bob and Tom, at the Atlantic City Pop Festival. And Bob had brought an ad for Woodstock, and that's when we talked about, yeah, let's do it. And I was due to, work through Labor Day, but the day before we headed off to Woodstock, I let my boss know that I wasn't coming back. And so that's how we learned about it. I'm sure Bob learned about it through his record store contacts. And as far as I know, Bob is the only one who bought a ticket in advance. We went up just thinking, well, we're bound to be able to get in. It looks like a really big place, and how many people are going to show up, and that sort of thing. So,
how did you drive up?
We drove up in Bob's Corvair. I don't know what year it was, but it was an old car. It became afterwards forever known as the Woodstock Memorial Corvair because it was the last trip it ever made. So the three of us bundled into Bob's Corvair, and again we were all living in New Jersey, just across the river from Philadelphia, so it wasn't a long drive up or anything. And we went up a day early since we didn't have tickets, and we knew it was going to be quite a scene, so we wanted to get a good camping spot. So we didn't hit the humongous traffic jams that are so well known about Woodstock. We did hit a lot of traffic, and there are a lot of people hiking in that climbed on top of our car while we were driving into the campground. And when we finally got there, we saw a bunch of tents, so we just pulled off the road and down the hill and parked the car and set up our tent. And lo and behold, we were next to the hog farm where they had set up. So it was a pretty good place to be camped out, and got set up before the big crush arrived.
What do you remember about Thursday? Like, what did you get? Do you know what time you got there?
It would have been the afternoon sometime. We didn't leave real early, but still plenty of daylight. So there were a lot of tents already pitched, and the hog farm, of course, was well established in there. So we just kind of settled in and got to know our neighbors, and quite frankly sat down with all the pot we had and rolled all the joints we could roll because we knew we weren't going to be in the tent for a whole long time.
You brought, how much cannabis did you bring?
I think we probably each had a couple of nickel bags or something. I think we've rolled 40 joints in the tent. And they were all gone by halfway through the first one because you light a joint and pass it and it just goes off for 400,000 people or whatever.
What kind of tent was it? Do you remember?
Nothing special. It might have been a Boy Scout tent or something. It barely fit the three of us. And Thursday night was the only night we spent in the tent, actually. The rest of the time we just stayed over on the hill at the concert site or in between music, wandered around and stuff. But
So you sleep overnight Thursday. Did you bring food? Did you eat at the free kitchen on Thursday? You do anything like that, or
we brought food that actually lasted. I've tried to remember this. Our food didn't last a real long time because we were heavy on the munchy food and a little light on the actual nutritious stuff. But we didn't get in any of the food lines until probably the Saturday at some point.
So on Friday, how do you approach, the concept or idea of the festival or sitting, or like what did you do Saturday morning when you wake up?
As I recall, and I don't have a chronological memory of this. A lot of it is a blur, as I'm sure you understand talking to a lot of people. But what I remember is kind of going out and scouting the area and what the lay of the land was going to be and how to get to the concert site and stuff like that. We probably did some of that even Thursday afternoon. So we decided to sit kind of up toward the top of the hill so that we could have a really good view. And we thought it's going to be a crush down there by the stage. So after scattering it out, we went and got all our food, our sleeping bags, and all our joints, and went over and set up a spot on the hill and settled in. And, in between acts and stuff, wander around, talk to people, see what else was going on, and just take in the sights. All three of us had 8mm cameras with us, silent, but so we would use time in between the acts to just get some general footage of what the scene looked like and stuff. I would say by Saturday morning and just starting to scout it out, it was when we really had a sense that this was going to be something like we hadn't seen before in terms of going to a concert. It started feeling Friday morning really something's happening here that's really special.
When you say that it began to feel like something's happening, what does that mean? Can you describe it, or
It's something? You're always anticipatory when you're going to a concert because you know the group and you know what you're going to hear and stuff. And there was always a nice vibe at concerts in the late '60s and stuff. This was something kind of beyond the anticipated concert. It was really the whole general atmosphere of just seeing all these people streaming in. For example, just the numbers said this is way beyond what we expected. And the whole spirit of it was just more of a feeling of being on the verge of something really exciting. And lo and behold, very soon we were in the middle of it.
Do you remember first note? Do you remember the first act or like the minute music started?
With Richie Havens coming out, I sure do. It stuck with me so much that 25 years later, I had a radio program on a community radio station, and Richie Havens' Freedom was my theme song. It was a political talk show. It was called Freedom Highway. And so I used the Woodstock recording of Richie Havens as the theme song for my radio program. And even listening to it later, every time, weekly, bringing on that program, it was like I was flashing back to the opening of the concert.
What did that feel like? I know we're going to talk about feeling a lot, I think.
Yeah.
But like when you...
Here we go. It was. It felt like that sense of something special happening. When the first chords came, it just felt like curtains pulled back and something really special is beginning. It felt like the onset of something.
Do you so on Friday, do you have any specific like music moments or memories or anything of happening that you like, again, that just felt, oh, this is like keeps getting better and better, or I don't know, anything? Do you have vivid memory of any of the bands Friday?
Well, of Richie Havens and of Arlo, certainly, and Joan Baez was on late Friday, wasn't she?
Yeah.
I was a big Joan Baez and Arlo fan, and so I kind of remember those. And Joan's voice in that venue, in that atmosphere, was something pretty special that I remember. And what's neat was many years later I got to know her because she lives in my area.
Oh.
And I ended up in 1989 becoming the director of Peninsula Peace and Justice Center. So she and I had occasions to work together. And so another one of those memories was always kind of being jogged there.
Yeah, so partly, I know this about you, but you've had this life where the 3 days isn't really encapsulated because you've had things that keep it in your memory.
Yeah, it's something that historic basically does shape your life. You bring something out of it with you the rest of your life, and just to from party icebreakers, somebody talking about, well, what's the best concert you've ever been to, and you say Woodstock. Suddenly you've got a crowd around you. What was it like at Woodstock? And that's been interesting, is that all these years later, everybody still, you just say Woodstock, and they're not thinking 89 or 99, they're thinking 1969, and they know what it is, and have seen the movie and stuff. So yeah, it's part of who I am.
When I think that it's at the end of Joan Baez, somebody comes up on stage and says, I think we got to make the best of this, hunker down and crawl in your sleeping bags, and we'll see you in the morning, or something like that. And that's what you guys did?
That's what we did. We slept on the hill in our sleeping bags.
Do you remember there being rain Friday night, or any problems, or you just slept through the night, or?
I've always been a pretty solid sleeper, so you can ask her. I don't remember any problems. If Bob and Tom might give you an entirely different story, but
so what's Saturday like? Like from other reports, like Saturday morning, the sun comes up. It's beautiful. It's almost hot. Like
yes.
It's just sunny, and like the day seems like an amazing Catskills sunrise and day. Do you have memories of anything that you did on Saturday?
I don't remember anything particular we did Saturday morning other than, the usual wandering around, just soaking it all in and people watching, basically, until announcements were coming from the stage and we knew the concert was getting started up. So.
Why did the three of you bring film cameras?
I brought mine because I had just gotten it for my graduation. I had just graduated high school in June of that year, and that was my graduation gift. And I had always been interested in making movies, and I wanted to try it, so I had mine. Bob and Tom brought theirs. Theirs both belonged to their fathers, but they wanted something to record it. I don't think any of us had still cameras at the time, although I later became quite an avid amateur photographer, but so that's why we had them, and I'm glad we did, because it's been a unique record, and having gotten the film, I know you're going to go back to this topic, but having gotten it digitized and put it on YouTube, it's led to a lot of other things.
Do you know how much film you had? Like how much raw footage, like film that you had brought with you?
I don't remember how much we brought with us. I remember my camera, each reel was 3 minutes, and I probably brought about 10 reels with me. Between the three of us, what survived when we finally decided to get it digitized, when that became a possibility, we had 8 reels left between us, 24 minutes. That's what I've got up on YouTube. Bob is the one that got it digitized, so we just sent everything to him.
So so this is just a follow-up question to that, to be very clear. What got put up on YouTube was all, like, filming from all three of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And overall 3 days, or whatever.
So do you remember when music starts on Saturday? Did you guys, like, you're walking around and you're doing stuff, but do you, like, head back to be there for the first band that comes on, or were you coming and going during bands?
No, when the bands were on, we stayed there and listened to the bands. So the wandering around was definitely in between sets, and it wasn't every time. A lot of times we just sat and enjoyed the weather for a while anyway, and the crowd, and talking with people around us.
Do you have
Passing joints.
Do you have any specific memories about bands on Saturday? Like just like, again, and I only ask this because for a lot of people, and you've already explained this, you don't have a chronological memory, but there are things that are very vivid in your memory. And so as we're talking, I'm going chronological. It doesn't mean we need to, but it's just in case, like, there's something.
Yeah, I don't have a good memory of who played when, and that Tom was the one, he could tell you concerts, obscure concerts we had been to. Not only, who came on first and warmed up, he could recite the playlist of concerts we saw, 50 years ago. It was incredible. I don't have that kind of memory. But the ones that really stood out to me were The Who. They were late at night, and Jefferson Airplane. Was that late at night or very early in the morning? Morning Maniac music. One particular one, I guess we were wandering around at one point, because we were in the Enchanted Forest, they call it, and we heard rather than saw a lot of 10 years after from there, and we just stopped and listened because we knew we weren't going to make it back in time, but we didn't want to miss a note of that. So I didn't get to see that performance until the movie came out. that is one that we missed.
In talking about the Enchanted Forest, what do you remember about this? I'm pretty sure it's your film that somebody is filming about 90 seconds in the forest, and it's just black.
Yeah, it's we could see a little better than that, but I think that was my footage. I was wondering, is this going to come out? Probably not, but let's give it a try.
So one of the, like, what I'm always interested in, and again, I know it's long, and if you don't remember, it's fine, right? But whenever I look at that, I am always in my mind saying, like, what's he filming? Like, is he seeing something that's so amazing that he wants to capture it, or is it just he's walking through the woods? Do you have any recollection of what you were?
I was trying to get some of the signs and the vendors. I think there's one flash where you can see T-shirts or something. So I was just trying to get that scene. And it wasn't taken at night. It was pretty dense in there, and there was not enough light for this cheap little Super 8mm camera with no audio. So.
What was the vibe like in there? Do you remember?
I think Enchanted was a good name for it. It had kind of a mystical vibe to it, sort of thing. It's a very comfortable place to be. And
Do you remember there being a lot of people in there? Like you're in there, if you're in there during 10 years after, like, are there lots of other people in there, or like you just in there by yourselves?
I kind of remember a lot of people milling around in there, yeah. At that time, we went through a couple of times, and I think I mix up a little bit when exactly we were in there, but I can peg one of the times to when 10 years after was on, because I remember that.
There's on the other end of the forest is the entry to the hog farm. Like the hog farm is between the field or the forest is between the field and the hog farm. Did you go into the hog farm and, like, you said on Saturday you may have gone in there and gotten food?
By the time we got food, it was from one of the stands up on top of the hill,
All right.
as I recall. But we would do that path a couple of times because, like I said, we were camped right next to the hog farm. And although we didn't stay in the tent, I think we might have returned for something once in a while. And the car was back there and things like that.
Did you ever go to the free stage down there? See any of the bands that were on the other stage?
Yeah, we did. We watched some of the performances there and some of the yoga exercises. And I don't remember what any of the performances were, but it was really neat to have this little thing there. We didn't even realize, I don't think, until well into the concert, who it was that was set up there, that it was the hog farm. But it was obviously somebody that was pretty well organized, because you don't usually go camping with a stage.
So we're getting back to like the questions I'm asking about the chronology. On Sunday, Joe Cocker plays. It starts at 1:00, and then after that is the rain. Were you caught in the massive rainstorm?
Yeah, we were out on the hill. We watched Joe Cocker. I remember that whole performance, and we were out in the rain, and I think we just sat there with jackets over our heads and tried to ride it out. And that's when I started losing my sleeping bag, because it just started becoming one with the mud. You know, it was my Zen sleeping bag. And, I didn't sit on my sleeping bag for the rest of the concert after that. I found some cardboard or something to sit on for a while. But yeah, I remember the rain coming on and the chants of no rain. We were right in the crowd going, no rain, and that sort of thing. So.
Did you stay through the end of the show, which is Jimi Hendrix? Did you stay through morning and see Sha Na Na, Jimi Hendrix?
Yes and no. I stayed through Sha Na Na. There was a break. I wasn't sure who was coming on next, and I was just beat. I don't think I've ever felt as tired before or after than I did then. So I went back over to the campsite, and I may be the only person who slept comfortably in the back seat of a Corvair. But that's what I did. I crashed out, and I missed Jimi Hendrix. Bob and Tom stayed over there. They came back and woke me up to tell me I had missed a fabulous performance by Jimi Hendrix. So.
And then how does Woodstock end for you?
We actually stuck around for a while on Monday. None of us had any pressing, urgent need to get back. So we thought, let's let the place clear out and the traffic get out of here. And we went back over to the field and helped clean up for a while.
And what were you cleaning up?
Mostly the trash, a lot of sleeping bags and other things like that, muddy clothes, just all kinds of discards. And basically what they had us doing was just dragging it to central huge piles that I guess they were going to plow away later or something. But there was a lot of stuff left, not because people were littering per se, it was wrecked stuff. It was just covered, everything was covered in mud and half buried in the mud. And so it was mostly just dragging stuff around and centralizing these trash piles. And we did that for about an hour or two. And it was coming back from that. You were asking about the signs. I don't know if
Yeah.
I don't want to jump the gun.
No,
but
this is perfect.
as we were coming back through the Enchanted Forest, Bob and Tom were saying, "I guess they're done with these," and they each just took one down from the tree.
Do you remember how he took it off? Like, did he just reach up and yank it?
I don't. I don't have a memory of them actually doing it. I think I walked on and they caught up with me or something. So I have no idea how they did it.
And you just got back to the car, threw him in the car, packed up your tent, threw it in the car, drove home.
Sort of drove home. We had to get pushed up the hill. the little Corvair, in all the wet and stuff, there was a kind of a knoll to rise before we got up to the road. Bob's car wasn't making it. And we got about 20 people recruited to push us up the hill. And I think that's what killed Bob's Corvair, was really straining to get up that hill, because he was never able to get it over about 50 miles an hour going home. And he dropped Tom and I off at our respective homes and went home himself and parked the car, and it never started again. Hence the Woodstock Memorial Corvair. But we had waited long enough that, we didn't hit the huge traffic jams leaving or stuff. So
And you just
pretty leisurely drive back.
when you got home, did you have conversations with your parents, or what was that? Or you just go to sleep? You have any memory of like what the arrival home was like?
I do, actually, because my parents were actually quite excited that we had been there. They had followed it on the news. They just thought we were going camping and going to a concert out in the countryside. And then it hits the news that it's this major event. So, of course, my mother was worried sick, and there are no cell phones, so they hadn't heard from me in 5 days, by the time we got back. So they were really thrilled that I had been there. Even my father, who was not a big fan of the counterculture by any means, a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, he thought it was really neat that we had participated in this. He didn't realize at the time, any of us, I don't think, realized how historic it was, long-lasting, and really legendary it would become. But they both had a sense of it, and were kind of happy for me. And even, didn't make too much of a stink about losing a sleeping bag. So that was a nice welcome back. Yeah.
Did you ever have a showing of any of the 8mm film? Did you do a party and show the film or anything like that?
The only thing I've done close to that, we got it digitized.
But in '69, you didn't do that where?
No. We looked at it ourselves. That's an interesting question. We must have done something, but just with friends, not a big party or anything. But years later, I'm talking more currently, post-pandemic, I did screen it for friends around the country on Zoom.
Oh.
And we also played the PBS documentary on Zoom for friends around the country. So that was a fun gathering.
Yeah.
And on that one, Tom had actually spent some time putting together a nice soundtrack of Woodstock music to go with our footage. And so when they first sent me a DVD of the digitized stuff, it had Tom's soundtrack on there. I uploaded it to YouTube, and it was taken down in 30 seconds.
Because of the music.
Yeah, because of the music. So I stripped the music out and just uploaded the raw footage.
So this gets to the third part of our conversation. You put the contacts that you began getting with filmmakers came after you posted the footage.
Yeah, it got posted probably in about 2009, I think, 2010, something like that. So the first contact, and I've been trying to think back on this, came in about 2016, late toward the end of the year in 2016, that a film production company, documentary production company in Hollywood that specializes in TV documentaries, hour-long things. They were the first ones to call, got in touch with me through YouTube, because I don't have my real email address there, but I responded right away. We had actually been contacted by the History Channel several years before this. They were doing something about a soldier in Vietnam who comes home on leave and goes to Woodstock. It was a real story of some sort. I never saw it, but they wanted to use some of our footage for that. So that was really the first one. So we were prepared for people to ask about it. We had already agreed around the History Channel one that anybody who wants to make a documentary about Woodstock and will treat it respectfully can use our footage, and we're not going to charge anything. So when the first one contacted me, I said, I do want to double check with Bob and Tom, and it's okay, but I'm pretty sure it'll be all right. So, and again, I don't remember the name of this production company, but I did look them up. They were legit and do a lot of TV stuff. And that resulted, he did hour-long interviews on the phone with all three of us, and then he came back and said they were going to do on-interview cameras and wanted to use our footage. And they came back and said, we'd like you three guys to be in this. And in the meantime, I had been contacted by Arc Media, who was producing this 50th anniversary documentary for American Experience on PBS. And they got in touch maybe a month after this Hollywood thing did. So I really wanted to be with the PBS one. And after they talked to all three of us, the PBS one only wanted to interview me for their documentary. So we had a little conflict between Bob and Tom and I, because they were signed on to this other one, and PBS didn't want me to go with them.
Right, so you had to sign an exclusive agreement with PBS?
They never asked me to sign anything. I was surprised, but I guess they figured they had enough permission on recorded phone calls and emails and stuff. Made very clear that they could use it. But in terms of for my interview, they didn't want me talking to anybody else. So, and then this British company got in touch, and they just wanted footage. They had actually found someone who had a video camera there, an early video camera at Woodstock. So that group of people kind of constituted their interviews a lot, but they wanted other footage to kind of roll it out. So there was a little bit of tension, and I think Bob and Tom were disappointed that they weren't selected for the PBS thing. And then we just stopped hearing from the Hollywood one. We don't know whatever happened to that. I think they just couldn't get enough rights to the footage and stuff, because they're much better competing. So in talking to the folks at Arc Media, Jamila Efron was the co-director, co-producer that I talked with a lot. She said when this British production came up, they were still hoping to use home footage of Woodstock. That was going to be their plan, was to use home footage and these voiceover interviews with attendees, the people who took it. And at the same time, they were trying to cut a deal. This is really interesting. I learned a lot about how this stuff works. They were trying to buy the rights to a lot of the music from, is it Warner Brothers, I guess owns it? And the price is just outrageous. And finally, somebody at Warner Brothers said, I'll tell you what, we'll give you at this price, a lot of the camera people from Pennybacker's crew were down in the crowd. We'll give you the rights to that stuff, for a reasonable price. So their plan kind of changed, because now they had all this really great footage from ground level. So they weren't as concerned about the home movie footage. And so they let me give the British people like a first exclusive or something, because the PBS one did air all over Europe eventually. So anyway, and that was fun. Trying to get this straightened out, I ended up doing a Skype call with the producer in London, and it was all very interesting. And then, so anyway, by early 2017, it was clear that the PBS one was going ahead. We weren't hearing back from Hollywood. This British one just wanted our footage. And it was in April of 2017 that I did the interview. And I remember this because when the movie finally premiered in April of 2019 at the Tribeca Film Festival, I looked back on my e-calendar to see how long it had been since I had done that interview. And it was 2 years almost to the day that I had done the interview and the movie premiered. It was like 2 days off from being 2 years exactly.
Where did you do the interview?
The interview was held at Fantasy Record Studios in Berkeley. And that was fun because a lot of my favorite albums have been recorded in that studio. So it was really neat to go in there and see all these album covers on the wall of albums that I really treasured.
Was it filmed and recorded?
No, just recorded. They knew what they wanted to do,
Yeah.
and they wanted to have us narrating, and then our footage, and what it turned out was Warner Brothers footage.
Did you have to write what you were going to say and you were reading it, or you recorded your oral history?
Jamila Efron, the co-producer, sat across the table from me. We were in a little soundproof, not even a booth, it was like a cubby sort of thing. Steffi was in the sound booth with the director, Barrett Goodman, and he was thrilled at the answers I was getting. No, Jamila had a very careful set list of questions. They clearly had a general script in mind and the areas that they wanted to hit. And it was done so that, she would ask a question. She made it clear that she would ask a question, pause so that I'm not talking over her or anything, and be sure that I don't sound like I'm answering a question. So don't say, yes, I was there, so that it would just fit into the flow of their script. And it was a little hard to get used to. Doing a lot of political organizing, I've been interviewed quite a bit, but not quite so formally to leave this break and be sure to just give an affirmative, moving forward kind of answer without sounding like I'm answering a question. It was an interesting process.
Did they ever ask you to repeat an answer or to
Yeah, because sometimes I would forget and say, oh yes, can you do that again? So not a lot. I did pretty well, and what I do remember, it was 2 hours long.
Huh.
I felt like I was losing my voice near the end. And Barrett Goodman, the director, said he's pretty sure I have the most time speaking on screen in the documentary.
Have you ever calculated out how much time you're speaking versus the 2 hours?
No, I've thought of doing it, and I haven't done it. Maybe I will do that at this point. It's probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's only an hour and a half long film.
When it came out, were you surprised, or did it make sense, and you were like, oh yeah, this makes sense why they were asking me that, or were you thrilled about it? What's that like when it comes out and you see your name and you hear your voice and you see your footage?
Well, it was pretty exciting because I hadn't seen it till we went to the premiere in San Francisco at the invitation of Barrett Goodman, who was traveling. It did a theatrical release first. It opened at Tribeca Film Festival which Bob did attend. He got to go to the first screening of it, and they knew that he was coming, and they let him in and gave him, he and his wife, seats right up front, and a poster. I've still got the poster for the movie that he sent me from the film festival. So he called me as soon as he left the theater and said, "Boy, you're in it a lot, and it's great." But it took until June when it opened in the Bay Area. So the first time I saw it was, I'm forgetting the name of the theater, it was here in San Francisco. You remember what it was? Opera Plaza, I think. Anyway, I gathered up a bunch of friends, and we went out and had dinner, and then went over to the movie, and I still didn't know what to expect. I had a general idea, and then of course it takes a while before the attendees actually show up in there. So when my name finally did come on, it was kind of neat, kind of fun. So
we use that video for training in our docent program and for new staff. So
really,
we watch that video about twice a year. We host not a watch party, but a training.
Yeah.
And we just watched it for staff training, and then I had to lead a session talking about it and asking, questions and answers, and what did you see and things like that.
Have you ever done a public screening at
No.
the center? Or
so they did in 2019. I didn't come on staff until after 2020. When it premiered, they did a premiere screening. Did you come to the site for that? Have you ever been back to the historic site?
I have not. Bob has been back several times, and I think Tom went back. But I have not. Hoping to maybe go back for the 55th anniversary next year, but we need to discuss this. But and then at the premiere, they had a post-screening little chit-chat with the director, and I went up front, and they had the movie reviewer from the San Francisco Chronicle kind of interviewing the two of us. And then we did it again 2 nights later at the California Theater in Berkeley when it opened there. So I got to do 2 premieres basically as a special guest. And, that was really fun and reminiscing.
As we get to the end, these questions we ask, really. So these are a couple of questions, but. In some of this you've implied or talked a little bit about, but this is really to put it in a context where we can find it if we need it later.
Okay.
What do you think the impact Woodstock had on your life? What is if I say that, what's the impact Woodstock had on your life? How do you answer that?
I had a lot of optimism for the counterculture, that we were literally demonstrating an alternative way of living and connecting with each other and dealing with each other as a society. And I thought Woodstock kind of said, it can be done. That vision is valid. And I think Woodstock has kind of confirmed that in that that's how the world has seen it in the years since, that, yeah, 500,000 people came together, for 5 days, and it was peaceful, and they did what they said. They were going to love one another. And so it was, I guess what stayed with me is that optimism of that period. And boy, things are really different now, but I retain a certain amount of optimism that we will find new ways of living together and relating to each other a lot more harmoniously than we're managing to pull off these days.
So that optimism really is a great lead into our last question, which is I think that we're collecting these with the idea, that at the 100th anniversary, some historian is going to say, well, what happened to Woodstock? And that person's not even born yet.
Yeah.
What is the legacy of Woodstock that you want those future generations to know who might find this recording?
I think it would be that same sense of optimism, determination to forge a new way, a peaceful way of living and working together. I think even at the 100th anniversary, that will come across when people look at the footage and hear these interviews and these oral histories and stuff. I think the way the world saw it shortly after it happened and the way the world celebrated the 50th anniversary of it, I don't think that'll fade. It won't be as immediate because nobody who was involved will be around anymore. You know, for the 50th, a lot of us are still around. For the 55th, a lot of us are still going to be around. But the 100th, what's going to be around is the spirit.